April alone, Ark has invested like $100 million. What is it about Tesla you guys are so sure about where you keep investing and keep doubling down on your claim?
The business of Tesla transforms if they're able to deliver robo-taxi capability to their cars. The way to think about it, you're going to buy a Cybertruck for them, and which is a great and amazing vehicle. You'll probably be able to drive it on Mars someday, but they're getting like a one-time operating profit off selling that vehicle to you. If that can turn into a robo-taxi, then it could do, maybe 100,000 miles per year, and they'll take a platform fee just like Uber or Lyft does. And so maybe it's a 50% platform fee at $1 per mile. They'll get $50,000 in revenue per year at software margins. And so you can do all the math and you can conclude that instead of making money off every vehicle sold just once, they're going to make maybe 5x more money, maybe 10x more money off every vehicle they have on the road every year, assuming that they can software upgrade the vehicles so that they can drive themselves, which they claim they can, and we believe they can, and we think it's going to happen over the next couple of years. So with that as the framework, it's actually an amazing business that people don't understand right now, because right now it's just making money off of selling you a Cybertruck, which, by the way, is a pretty good business itself. But the robo-taxi business transforms what Tesla is and can become. When you get the Cybertruck, you should get full self-driving as well. I use it all the time in LA, and it is life-changing. Just being able to not be stressed about driving around in the city it's really a remarkable product as it exists today. And we think it's going to get better.
Buy me a Cybertruck, G.
So Ark Invest doubles down on FSD and robotaxis, and we know from a year ago that their 2027 Tesla stock price target is $2,000. And Kathy Wood has been on TV recently in the recent weeks, and together with Tasha Keeney from Ark Invest, they are all emphasizing that they are going to update their Tesla stock price target, and it is actually going to be higher than $2,000. But of course, their new target is going to be for 2028. And if you would like Tesla stock to go to $2,000 per share, click the like button. And it's incredible to hear that Brett Winton is able to drive in LA on FSD without stress. For me, if I drive it here in Vancouver, as long as I don't go downtown, yeah, I think it actually takes stress away. If I drive downtown, I'm not so sure about it, because I do need to intervene here and there, and not for safety reasons usually, but because it would do something rude like skip 50 cars that are waiting to turn right. I just take over before the car does something silly like that. It's not a safety concern, it's just uncomfortable.
It's a watershed moment. I mean, this is 3 years in the making that Tesla has been trying to get into China from an FSD perspective, and this unlocks a golden opportunity, not just for Tesla in China, but I think globally, it's a game changer, in my opinion. From a miles run perspective, so from a data perspective, China, that's the golden goose. So this is going to seriously advance Tesla from an FSD perspective, and Musk knew that. That's why he did this trip. It was obviously a surprise one, and I think it's going to come as a surprise in a good way to investors. Long time in the making. It's a trophy case moment for Musk getting back on that plane, come back from Beijing.
Dan Ives is not wrong when he says this is a watershed moment for Tesla, but really that began in August of 2023 when Elon Musk demonstrated V12 FSD. And to many, it became apparent when they got FSD V12 in their own cars.
What's really the game-changing nature of this particular move?
Autonomous FSD, when you talk about the golden vision, it can't happen without China. So this was a missing piece in the puzzle. The fact that they got this clearance from Beijing, it unlocks really now the whole vision. And I think that's why it's important in terms of the longer term, what Tesla could achieve, not just in China, but globally when it comes to FSD. And I think this is just the start. It's obviously a win for Baidu as well, but it really shows that now finally it's not just talk, it's walking the walk. I think it's a historical moment for Tesla in its FSD effort.
A historical moment for Tesla, I agree with that. But without China, Tesla couldn't solve FSD? No. I 100% disagree with that. If relations between the US and China remain not exactly great, and if they escalate in terms of getting much worse from here on, and especially with the US basically banning TikTok, things could go wrong. But so far, it seems like Elon Musk is navigating this whole situation extremely well. But assuming things go wrong, Tesla is going to solve autonomy with China or without. Now, of course, it's better for Tesla if Tesla can also enter the Chinese market because it's so huge.
What about China tech versus U.S. tech?
Look, I think right now U.S. tech's ahead of China. When we talk about AI, I think with Tesla, they're trying to thread the needle here. They're trying to take that technology, even though Baidu, it's stored in Shanghai, to actually be able to use that globally. And I think it just comes down to there's only two companies that have been able to thread the needle in terms of China, U.S. It's Cook and Cupertino, and it's Musk and Tesla. And that's why this is a huge win for Musk, even domestically, for him just to come in there during the auto show, come out, get FSD approval.
There's no doubt that Tesla needs China, with Elon Musk making that surprise visit. But does China need FSD? I was at the auto show. I saw all these new range of EVs. Hadn't been back to the auto show in 4 years because of COVID. And the technology has rapidly improved here, where a lot of these technology companies, whether it's Xiaomi or Huawei or others, are into this space. I'm going to go later today in Daxian District and get a test drive of autonomous robo-taxis by Pony AI and Toyota. Does China need FSD from Tesla?
Well, look, I mean, Musk's most followed person probably in the world. And Tesla, I view as a trophy case for Beijing. And that's why Musk is there, because despite what we've seen in terms of just the massive competition domestically and so impressive from BYD and others, China needs Tesla, just like Tesla needs China. And I think this is an important visit, especially in what I believe will be a rebound in China for Tesla. But FSD, that's the golden goose. That's what Musk is going after here.
We know that Tesla still exports a lot of vehicles from Giga Shanghai to other countries. And I just wonder, maybe Elon Musk went over there and talked to the Chinese officials and perhaps hinted that, it's better to have low unemployment in China than high unemployment. And it might be better if I decide to build and expand more here in China than, let's say, in India. So how about we make a deal? I'll invest more money later on here in China, and you guys for now approve FSD. And if not, maybe India is telling me to build a factory over there, and then maybe we don't need to employ as many people in China because we can export to other markets from India instead of from China. I'm definitely not saying this is exactly what happened, but it's a very small possibility this could have gone down. I mean, Elon was extremely effective and convincing, and he just did the whole thing so quickly. And it came out of nowhere, pretty much. How he did it exactly, for now, will remain a mystery, but maybe something will eventually come out.
Is there a risk to this relationship, though, between Tesla and China? Dan, I wonder, because just given the geopolitics right now, I'm guessing some of these DC hawks, China hawks, are not too thrilled with maybe what comes out of this trip as well. Could that be, this relationship could be more vulnerable than we think?
Look, I think it's no different when Cook's visited China and others. I mean, it's all part of this 10% politician, 90% CEO, right? When you look at Musk, I'd say almost the same for Cook. But when you look at Tesla, it is massively important within China. And it's very important to have Musk, I think, a very important part of the EV environment within China. And I think that's something where this visit, the timing's important, because like you say, the geopolitical, it's a cold tech war, but China needs Musk. And that's why, and vice versa. And I think this is a huge positive that will be very viewed favorably by investors tomorrow.
I'm not quite sure how much China at this moment needs Tesla, other than the benefit that China gets from Tesla from exporting the vehicles from China to overseas, because a lot of these Chinese companies are having a hard time selling their vehicles overseas, but Tesla, relatively speaking, is not. And there are so many options to buy electric vehicles within China, so it's not like China has to have Tesla within China.
It's not simply price that is a challenge for Tesla in China. To Steve's earlier point, the product lineup and the perception that a lot of the Chinese car makers have an offering that is either not just cheaper, but gives more value for Chinese consumers. That's the issue. And I'm wondering, Dan, whether or not you think it's a product offering issue as well in China for Tesla.
Look, I think Musk addressed that in the call. I mean, you will have what I view as a sub $30,000 vehicle by early next year. That comes not just globally, but we'll see in China. But just like we've seen with Apple, I mean, the Tesla brand is unique globally, and it's part of what Musk has built. And obviously, competition is going to continue to be fierce in China. But many consumers within China, they want to be driving a Tesla. And I think that's something where maybe a little blooms come off the rose, but there's a rebound that we see on the horizon within China. And that's why Beijing's courting Musk, just like Musk is courting China.
Dan, how much is the data security issue going to be a hurdle, if you will, for Tesla? I know they've been storing their data from Chinese Teslas in Shanghai since about 2021, complying with Chinese law. But again, it is a big issue geopolitically and commercial viability as well here in China. As well, the second part of that is the safety concerns. We all know that autopilot, there's a launch of an investigation in the U.S. about 20 accidents since December. Is FSD, the second part of this question, is FSD significantly, potentially safer than autopilot?
Yeah, look, and Stephen, you ask great questions, because I think for one, maybe a year ago it's not there, but now if you look at FSD 12 and you look at what they've done at Tesla, I think it's ready for prime time. In other words, I'd be surprised if China doesn't green light this technology, given where it's going. And then to some extent, like the security issues, look, a lot of the data will have to be kept in Shanghai, just like we've seen since 2021. But in terms of the algorithms and in terms of that data, it is important from a Tesla perspective that's something that can be used globally as part of their, what I view as their unique technology ramp. And this is, look, it's a balancing act. But that's why Musk is there breaking bread to sort of navigate these challenges that I ultimately believe he'll be successful in.
Now, China does have a different system over there, the way they run things in terms of the government and everything. Over here, let's say we can have a few collisions and it can be way overblown, because maybe, for example, if autopilot was not used, instead of 467 collisions, we would have had 1,000. But in this whole article, there's not a single comparison that I could find which said anything close to, well, if autopilot would not have been used, this many more accidents would have happened. So I think over there, they are going to be much more about, okay, show us the data, and if the data says that it is safe, okay, let's go. Even if we have crashes, it's safer. Without this, we would have more crashes. Over here, though, in the US, I think it will be extremely important to also manage the perception. And each fatality is going to be a tragedy, but it's important to remember that without FSD, once it becomes safer than human driving, we would have more fatalities without FSD. And this is data from Tesla's website. And you can see that it is safe, looking at the data, to use autopilot. Of course, you will still have accidents, absolutely 100%. But you will have less accidents, generally speaking, looking at the data, if you use autopilot compared to not using autopilot. So when you use it, it's almost a certainty that you will have some number of crashes avoided, except they are not going to make any headlines.
I mean, you still haven't outperformed for the stock, Dan. 275 is the price target. We're hovering around 168 for the stock here right now. Beyond just the FSD stuff in China, what else needs to happen really to get to that target now, you think?
Yeah, look, demand, especially resurgence in the second half of the year. We know it's going to be tough in terms of, coming into 2Q. I think numbers are set well in terms of now for the street. And I think investors are looking through this because if you start to see a resurgence in U.S., Europe, especially in China, with FSD, the golden goose, this is a stock that starts to hit north of 200. I think that, in our opinion, that category 5 nightmare that we've seen, that storm for Tesla, a lot of that's in the rearview mirror.
Have margins bottomed, or are there any early signs that margins are about to bottom? Because one of the guests told us last week, when that bottoms, the stock bottoms.
I think margins are in the processing of bottoming, and it goes back to the New York City cab drivers bearish on Tesla going into earnings. So I think we've navigated a lot of that, and now I think it's set up for a lot more positive surprise, and this is just one. FSD in China, if that gets unlocked, it would be a game changer for the stock.
It would be great to have great auto margins as well, and in the long term, Tesla is likely going to have fairly good auto margins. But really, looking at Tesla's future, FSD is going to make Tesla's auto business in a way look sort of like a rounding error. Not exactly, but sort of. So as a long-term investor, seeing this gigantic opportunity, I want Tesla to pay as much attention to FSD as possible. Prioritize that. Make sure that you're doing everything you possibly can to make it better, faster. And if at the same time you can maintain the auto business and run it well and grow it, that's great. But autonomy is number one for me.
By the way, Adam Jonas, you guys know him, Morgan Stanley. He's back. That's the headline from the Jonas note. Why? It shows the commitment is back. I think shareholders have been worrying, and Jonas mentions this in his note today. Is he really all in? Is he really all in? He's got X, he's got all this other stuff. Nope. He says that him being over in China says he is all in. You got that too?
Yeah.
This one.
Yes, we do. And remember, everything is rules-based, and has it done enough to restore itself in terms of momentum? Maybe, probably not. It has done a lot of work, that's for sure. I think when you look at both Apple and Tesla as an investor, you have to ask yourself the question, what do these individual stocks do for my portfolio over the next 6 months? If Tony Pasquarello, if Adam Parker are correct, what they see over the next 6 months, if it's a choppy environment, if maybe you want to be defensively oriented, then Apple's a great stock for you because Apple in its nature is defensively oriented. Is Tesla defensively oriented? I'm not so sure the answer to that is yes. So while the headlines are bringing this stock higher, I'm going to reiterate what I said last week when we had the conversation with Steve Weiss and Bryn. I certainly wouldn't be short. I wouldn't be short Tesla, but I'm not necessarily sure you're going to get the Tesla that you had in 2021 over the next 6 to 12 months.
I mean, this is yet another statement, sort of bet against this stock. Don't overstay your welcome, I think, is how I phrased it last week. If you want to be negative, fine. I mean, stock can obviously trade lower, but the snapback since earnings is pretty remarkable.
The best defense is offense, in my opinion, and Tesla's offense is really good. So if you do want to be positioned in a very defensive way, yeah, probably owning Tesla stock maybe is not the absolute number one best thing that you can do, just for the simple reason that the stock is so volatile, and that's obvious. But I feel good owning Tesla stock. If I wanted to be defensive in my stock picks, I would pick S&P 500. And I feel really good looking at Elon being the wartime CEO saying Tesla will spend around $10 billion this year in combined training and inference AI, the latter being primarily in car. Any company not spending at this level and doing so efficiently cannot compete. How many companies do you know spending basically $10 billion to build FSD?
How relevant is the existing U.S. data in training for Chinese full self-driving, or regionally is this completely separate training? Because I imagine, data you get training in Des Moines isn't going to be that great in New York City, right? We drive different in different places in this world.
Yes and no. So what we've learned from FSD in the U.S. is the highway driving is already as good as it's going to get. It's amazing. The difficult part is the urban environments. And what we've noticed from urban environments in China is that they actually are pretty similar to urban environments in the United States. And the other thing I would note is, remember, the Chinese, it's a central government authority that wants this to happen, that wants to have level 2+ and potentially more robotaxis, et cetera. So there is a more likelihood that we'll get to autonomy faster, actually, in China than there will be in the U.S. So while, rural areas, highways may be somewhat different, that part is not the difficult part. It's really the urban environments. And in the dense urban environments in China, it's actually not as different as what we have in the U.S.
I was born in Europe and I grew up there, and then I came here to North America, to Canada, and driving over here is a bit different. You need to know a few different rules over here. And I've been to China, to the mainland, and in a few places in Asia. And if you are a really good driver in the US or in Europe, you will be okay overseas as well. You just need to know the peculiarities, the specifics of the law. But Tesla has already proven that it works in Europe. And if it works in Europe, then I'm sure it's going to work in China as well. For example, Tesla did a 45-minute drive for a regulator, and it drove from downtown Munich to the airport, so not exactly the easiest drive in the world, and it only had one disengagement. And that's without lots and lots and lots and lots of data from Europe. I'm pretty sure Tesla has pretty much no data that it's putting into FSD from Europe into training FSD. Maybe it somehow has. Maybe it's just running in shadow mode. Maybe Tesla is doing that in Europe, but I think most of the data that Tesla is using to train FSD on is from the US. And yet it works in Europe too.
Looking out for investors, is there a kind of TikTok risk here for Tesla? I mean, Teslas are, driving around with cameras on them, sensors, looking at who's going where, how people drive. The argument could be made, I'm sure, from the Chinese government side, and probably has been made. It's why it took this long to get this kind of approval. That, boy, that's spy material if it's all getting sent to the U.S. So could this end up being a bargaining chip getting turned on and off in these periods of U.S.-China tensions, or is there enough benefit, social, societal benefit that China's getting that they're not going to want to do that?
Yeah, I mean, this has been going on for a long time where they didn't allow that data to go back to the U.S. for the, algorithmic learning. So clearly the reason why they accepted it now is there's a reason, and it's what you just pointed out. It's safety. FSD in the U.S. is 5 times safer than a regular car, not 5% more, 5 times safer, right? So, governments like China, certain states in the U.S., they're looking for the greatest good to society. It's saving lives. It's definitely a huge utility that it does. So I think it's really them looking at what's the best thing for society, and it's saving lives, limiting accidents. That's really what's the driving force here.
I am definitely not going to get into politics about China and everything, but I'll just say that I don't think that Tom is right here, really. I'm not sure exactly why China is approving it. I think Elon said something and they said, yeah, that sounds good. I think if it wasn't for Elon Musk, this wouldn't be approved.
Does this end up helping Tesla longer term with what might be seen as a margin problem, right? There have been all these price cuts as Chinese EV competitors are going up against Tesla. Do you think Tesla is going to license this technology to others within China and therefore make margin whether they're selling hardware or not? Or are they going to keep this internal Apple style and use it to try to justify selling their cars either at higher prices or getting a government subsidy if they can prove through data that it is safer?
Yeah, and I just want to point out, I've had FSD and Robotaxi together worth like 70 to 80% of my price target for a long time now, almost a year. So it's not only it is the margin, right? It's the software business subscription. My model has it at $50 a month, and they've lowered it from $200 to $100. Just imagine when you put the gross margins on a software product, the multiple you can get. So part of it's the valuation you get from re-rating the stock as a tech company, a software company. The other aspect, exactly what you pointed out, is the margin story. And we've seen what's happened with auto margins coming down. They probably will come down some more with the new affordable car. But it doesn't matter if you can slap on an amazing subscription on it that gets you a higher margin. So if we can see margins overall in aggregate slowly creep up because of FSD take rate, and we're hearing already the version 12 free trial was a smashing success, then that translates into greater margins overall. You'll definitely see the narrative for Tesla change from being a car company to something obviously much, much more.
By the way, when Tom Narayan talks about robotaxis and FSD, what he means, I heard him talk about this a few days ago, he doesn't think that level 5 autonomy is possible, meaning he thinks that it could be in some geofenced areas. It's going to be a thing that your vehicle helps you with. So it's not like Tom has FSD considered in his Tesla stock price target, and Tesla stock is never going to go above his target, which is in the $300 range. I mean, as you have just seen, just having Tesla basically announce that it is going to launch FSD in China, not a robotaxi, and it's definitely not safer than human driving at the moment, just that alone pushed the stock about 15% higher in a single day. And you do realize that Tesla is also going to launch FSD in Europe, and there are eventually going to be other places in the world, but North America, Europe, and China, these are the three big ones. I think Ark Invest values robotaxis and FSD in a much more aggressive way, of course, and I think eventually they are going to be closer to the truth than that $300 price target that Tom has here. I'm just not quite sure if Tesla stock is indeed going to go to $2,000 in just 5 years like Ark Invest says. It might take a bit more time. But for me as an investor, I am happy with S&P 500 returns. So as long as I can beat that, I'm extremely happy. That's it for today's video. Make sure to click the like button so that we can make sure that there's no shadow ban on this channel. Here's another video showing that it's only getting about half of the views it would normally get because my videos are only shown to about 50% of the regular viewers in the first few days. And then after the first 3 days, it does push it out a little bit more, but because it's no longer news, it's old, no one's interested. So I appreciate everyone clicking the like button. That really helps. I am publishing a video on the main channel today. If you didn't realize, maybe the algorithm hasn't shown you yet, but I am still publishing daily videos. It's just on the Clips channel. So I will put a link down below. If you are not subscribed to that channel, you will miss out on my daily videos. So make sure to go ahead and subscribe if you haven't seen these videos yet. Otherwise, YouTube is likely not going to show you these videos. And I'm publishing this video just because I want to see if this channel is still suffering from a shadow ban or not. Thank you so much for watching, and the daily news video is still going to be published on the other channel later today.